in another situation here, bad blood in transfusions can give you hepatitis. And for decades, drug addicts and derelicts were getting money by going in 2-3 times a week and selling their blood. Those were not isolated. They were not destroyed. They were put into the general blood pool, and unknown numbers of Americans in the hospitals receive blood transfusions, end up with hepatitis or herpes 6. And the outstanding work of two of the best journalists in America, Nina Ostrom, the New York Native, and Charles Ortlieb, the publisher of the New York Native, showed the danger of having human herpes 6 in the system, what it would do to the immune system, causing all the symptoms we call AIDS, and they were dismissed out of hand. Also, once you have hepatitis B or hepatitis C, you can cross-react and test positive, which is probably what happened according to what he said with Arthur Ashe. Thank you for your comments. We have, this is from Diane from New York. When Gallo made his discovery, who was employing him? He was he motivated simply by his or his desire for a significant discovery? What was the National Cancer Institute?
He was a government paid scientist working for the government at that time.
United States government?
United States government in Washington, D.C. I've been to where he works, the National Institutes of Health in Washington.
Be seemingly better, but it's an enormous cost. It'd be like staying up for 5 nights in a row by taking caffeine. You might be awake, but you're going to pay a price. And now we see the deadly price of these antiretrovirals. So when someone says to me, well, there's a healthy black woman, let's take a look and see what that woman, did she ever have herpes, hepatitis, measles, diabetes, arthritis? Because those are just some of the conditions that a regular person could get tested and get a false reaction. And how many people know that they have hepatitis? I counseled 5 women in their 50s, healthy, affluent, educated. All of them had fatigue. When we tested their blood, they all had hepatitis. They didn't know how they got it, they didn't know when they got it, but they had it. When we worked on the hepatitis, they got better. So you need to know that there are a lot of things can test you positive.
If I could just add on this one here, I don't know from the questionnaire whether the person was sick at the time they were, and if they went on to antiretroviral drugs, because I do know from American government sources that over 60% of the people going on to what is chemotherapy, the same drugs are prescribed against cancer, 60% of these are totally healthy at the time. They've got no outward signs of illness at the time they put on the drugs. We've changed the definition of AIDS 4 times in the last 20 years in the United States. At the beginning, you had to be dying to be given an AIDS diagnosis. You had fungal pneumonia and you had very bad candida. Your prognosis was from 8 to 14 months. Today, if you've got a low number of CD4 cells, you're said to be ready to go on to antiretroviral drugs. One of the studies I've read recently is from a major hospital. It went around all its seriously ill patients and tested their CD4 cells and how many they had. They found and reported no correlation at all between prognosis or how serious the illness was and the number of CD4 drugs. There was nothing there. Basically, it's part of what I was saying before. The body can change CD4s into CD8s because CD8s are the natural killer cells. When you've got a pathogen in your blood and your blood wants to get rid of it quick, it doesn't need the helper cells so much as the killer cells, so it changes the CD4s into CD8s. Okay, CD8s drop right down a number, and up go your CD8s. Your body is striking back. That's all it can mean. They've also found an enormous range. There are people climbing the Alps with CD4 cells in their blood.
Oh, let me give you an example. Over 12 years ago, to challenge the idea that low T cells under 200 in and of itself could give you a diagnosis of AIDS, I tested the blood of all the people that I was training to do the New York City Marathon. We were within a week of doing the marathon. We've been training for 9 months. Vegetarians, no smoking, no drinking, no unhealthy sex, really healthy people. Every single one of us had under 200 T cells. That was what was happening. Now that, but after the marathon and after a 2 months rest, T cells back up anywhere from 800 to 1600. So when you consider how many things can drop your T cells, and yet that was the big thing for a long time, number of your T cells. I've seen people who've had 1 or 2 T4s and were outstandingly healthy. They put too much emphasis on that. Now this is an important question for you. This is from Gary K, and he says, this is for Janine. Did you contact Gallo or Popovic on the documents discovery? Where did you obtain these documents, and how were they not revealed until now? Three good questions. Thank you, Gary K.
3 good questions. Gallo contacted me because when I was doing this research, I put out to numbers of scientists, quite a large number of scientists, my research notes, my draft articles, the chapter of my book. And Robert Gallo himself sent me a half-page email, full page, in terms of how much was in it, attacking me, saying I clearly wasn't interested in the truth, totally ignoring. I sent him details on these papers. I told him that I'd found this report with all the changes in his handwriting. He didn't even comment on that. What he did complain about was I also said that the Secret Service investigated him in '93. The Secret Service whose responsibility is to protect the American presidents. It investigated Robert Gallo for fraud. And he denied it. He said, no, this never happened. Well, he said that to the wrong person. I've interviewed I've met high-up people in the CIA, I've met KGB generals in Moscow, Mossad, Israeli intelligence. I know the intelligence community. 2 days later, I was talking to the former head of the Secret Service, who's now in retirement, and he was personally in charge of the investigation into Robert Gallo. It seems that Robert Gallo had to provide documents to lawyers employed by the French government. The French government wanted to take him to court for stealing their firearms. So, as the law goes, he had to provide laboratory documents. What the Secret Service did in their very fine laboratory in Washington was test these documents for forgery. And now these documents were each inside a cardboard, a file, sort of cardboard file. And they found that they'd all been changed on the same date, leaving an impression on the outside of the file. One of the changes was to rename the file as HTLV3 as HIV. Yet he gave these documents to the lawyers